Hopefully it doesn't sound like Space Invaders. All right, welcome everyone. 6:30, we're gonna start up. First off, thanks for tuning in, and a big thanks to the Jackson Hole Land Trust for providing the tech services, and Max next to me, saving my bacon when I screw up. And a few things. We're gonna have Frank Harris, he's also on my other side. If you have questions, you can type those into the chat, and he will either address them directly on the chat, or we'll save them for the end and answer them online. And it'll be my opportunity to stick my foot in my mouth, and then Frank will give you the right answer. So that's kind of the order of events there. You may be asking yourself why we're doing this webinar, especially in February, essentially halfway through the winter. And it relates to switching the platform in November, October into November, and the web host, and mirroring the National Avalanche Center. And with the new platform and with the new web host, folks are struggling to find the forecasting products and tools that they're used to finding on the old Bridger-Teton site. The website has continued to evolve from October to now, and basically everything that used to be on the website last year is at this point on the new one, plus a whole lot more. And we'll get into that a whole lot more during this webinar. So I'm pleased to see where it goes. As Frank is prone to saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, and for sure this website wasn't built in a day. So it took some time to get everything online and functional. But I think my personal opinion is that the functionality and the consistency with other Avalanche centers has been worth the change. So that's the intent of this webinar, is basically to help you to find the tools on the website. Maybe they're tools that you're familiar with, maybe they're new. And I hope to make it so you understand some of them better as well. We're gonna start with a pretty basic approach, basically looking at the full forecast as you would from the phone, as most people actually are probably looking at the forecast in the morning using their phone and not on a desktop or a tablet. So we'll start with that approach. That'll be a little bit of PowerPoint action because I couldn't do it on the screen, so I took screenshots. And then we will move into other forecast products, and I'll do it more real time off the website. So I am going to start sharing my screen, I think. Okay, so the general format of this, why this webinar, just explained. Why me is a bigger question. Basically, I've been a user of the Bridger-Teton Avalanche bulletin from the days of Jim Kanzler, and recorded phone messages on a tape machine. So that dates me pretty well. I also follow 5 different forecasts from around the country daily, and intermittently tune into a lot more for my job. So have those perspectives. Probably first and foremost, why me was been vocal enough about the changes to the website and messaging to the public that I was volunteered for this. But I'm happy to be here, and here we go. Maybe. Why is this hung up? There we go. So as I mentioned, we'll start with the fast approach to the full forecast. This is something I envision people doing on their phone over 5 to 7 minutes. We'll do the deeper dive into forecasting, and I see people taking anywhere from 10 minutes to even an hour. And this would be not necessarily just be in the morning, but it would be in the evening and be based either on your phone. All the products work on your phone, or desktop computer, or tablet based. Obviously, the bigger screen makes it easier to see a lot of these products. We'll talk about the observations platform. I think the single biggest improvement to the products from the Bridger-Teton Center. We'll get into the weather resources and some tips for using the big sheet, the RPK forecast, Southeast Idaho avalanche guidance, and a little more. If these don't make sense to you, they will, hopefully, at the end of this webinar. And I doubt we'll get into the advanced forecasting tools. These are really amazing products through Inversion Labs that we were developed over the last 5 years. I think if we don't hit them tonight, we'll probably be able to create how-to videos that you'll be able to access on the website, or some other way. But basically, we'll have some video explanations of how these advanced products work. Okay, so many of you are tuning in, probably already get the email from the Bridger-Teton Avalanche Center. And there's various ways that you can get to the forecast. If you don't remember any of them, or only have capacity to remember one thing, remember avalanche.org, because this will bring you to basically the Western US, Alaska, Mount Washington, and you can get the avalanche forecast just by clicking on the zone that you are in. And the benefit now of this new platform is that this Avalanche Center forecast is going to look like the Northwest Avalanche Center forecasts. It's going to look like the Flathead in the Forecast Center, the Sawtooths. It'll all be very translatable. There's 2 Avalanche Centers that don't currently use this format, and there used to be 3. Other ways to get to the Avalanche Center is through the old address, jhavalanche.org. And as Frank told me yesterday, all you have to do is type in BTAC, and the Google search will bring you right to the center. Okay. So more commonly, you're probably starting on one of these 2 pages, and these are screenshots from my phone. If you typed in the website address on the home page, you would see this with the 3 forecast zones, the Tetons. This is from yesterday. Tetons, the highest rating being considerable, so it has the orange, or level 3, and then Togety Pass, level 2, and the Grays River, level 2. To go to the full forecast, all you would have to do is tap on or click on that area that you wanted to go to. If you get the email, I scrolled down through the email to the Grays River as an example. Again, this is yesterday's. One thing some people have overlooked is this button, the full forecast. So you're not only getting the bottom line statement and the hazard ratings at the different elevations and the weather forecast at the base of that, but you're getting the ability in one click to go to the full forecast. So clicking that, here's what you get. So the key to this, any internet product, whether avalanche related especially, first thing you want to look at is the date and time. Make sure it's the current forecast. These have an expiration. That's part of the National Avalanche Center network. So basically at that expiration, those polygons that represent the areas go gray, because the things may have changed enough so that there is an expiration to those. And that's why when you look at the forecast map, particularly not on weekends, you will see a lot of gray. Okay, so this was valid yesterday when I pulled this up, and I went to the scroll down, and this is just a finger swipe down, and you're back to the bottom line. And the bottom lines are pretty challenging to write. You're taking anywhere from 300 to 400 words describing the situation and having the forecast discussion, and you're trying to capture it in 5 sentences or less. And essentially, a good bottom line is going to answer, what is the problem? What is it? Where does it exist? And what should you do about it? Ultimately, everything in the forecast points back towards the bottom line and really shouldn't contradict it. It's a really tough job, but if you're trying to just get a quick vision of the day, the bottom line is a great place to start. The next, scrolling down, you have your elevation bands. These are pretty set between the 3 forecast zones for the Bridger-Teton Avalanche Center. They're going to represent the highest rated hazard for that elevation zone. There may be different problems that exist in different parts of those elevation bands, but they're going to default to kind of the highest hazard rating or danger rating. And you should think about this in perspective. For these elevation bands, for other centers, they may be below tree line, near tree line, and above tree line or alpine. But in bigger ranges, you're going to have a lot more area up at the upper elevations with the commensurate amount of variability that you get from high winds and high elevations. And then you have your middle elevation bands and lowest elevation bands, and they're covering all aspects as far as this danger mountain, if you want to call it that. This is a screen grab directly from a video from the National Avalanche Center explaining how to use forecast products, and that is hot linked on the BT site. A quick digression for those who haven't heard this before is that the danger scale is not linear. So if you're looking at a chance of an avalanche, it's not just twice as much from low going to moderate, and then twice again from low going to considerable. It's more towards an exponential scale. So an increase in avalanche hazard is more than, it's one step in a qualitative sense, but it's a much larger step in a quantitative sense, meaning you're going to see a lot more avalanches or be a lot more likely to trigger one. All right, moving down, we encounter our first avalanche problem. And for the Grays River yesterday, wind slab was the most likely one that you would encounter. It's level 3, if you will, on the possibility or the likelihood scale. So your chances of seeing it are greater than if it was lower on this scale. Small avalanches to large avalanches, or in Tech Talk, D1 to D2 size avalanches. And you can see that it's present at the upper and mid elevations from north through east to the south aspects. So generally speaking, the winds were westerly and loading the east half of the compass is one way to refer to it. So although it was out of this forecast zone, they used this picture from the Teton zone to illustrate a couple things. One, these shallow wind slabs on Ralph's slide, and the fact that even if you have a D1 avalanche, if you're in the wrong terrain, they can produce bad consequences. So it definitely illustrates a couple things. One, where the problem lives, and the potential consequences of triggering it in the steeper, rockier alpine terrain. Oops, sorry. Okay. Moving on, things jumped out at me. Watch for snow that is, sorry, the text box in my way, that is denser than snow found on wind-sheltered slopes, and telltale clues such as surface texture and pillow drifted appearance. So there's a fair amount of discussion that you're probably not going to remember, but remember the key points. Okay, look for those fat loaded pillows. Look for surface snow textures that show, hey, snow has moved from this kind of sharp eroded zone into this smooth fat loaded zone. And then where to go: avoid steep slopes or consequential exposed terrain where you find these indications of recent wind loading. So this is going back to the messaging in the bottom line. Problem number 2, persistent slabs, middle and upper elevations, all aspects, and much larger, less likely, but bigger. In the discussion, again, getting into very steep areas greater than 35 degrees and alpine terrain and thin spots. And then even deeper into the snowpack, the deep persistent slab, which seems to be more on the southern half of the compass, and with terrain advice accompanying that. Forecast discussion. This is where I think some really important information comes out. And first and foremost is, where does the forecaster's uncertainty come from? Well, the forecaster is saying, hey, you know, the main thing here, our problem number 1 is the wind, and we're uncertain how much wind we're going to get, how much snow we're going to get, and that's going to definitely influence how hazardous the rest of the day is going to be. So it kind of sets you up for, hey, this forecast is under forecast, it's windier and snowier. We need to be on the conservative side. Hey, it's not that windy or snowy here. Okay, maybe we can step out a little bit. But this uncertainty is what you're going to try and field verify when you do your tour plan and when you go out. Does mention the problem that these new wind slabs are forming over old wind slabs, so you lose the surface clues once those get buried. And the potential for step downs. So with this new wind loading, is that going to overweight the underlying persistent slabs? And again, stepping back, your biggest tool is looking at the surface for wind loading patterns. So a big advance, I'd say, in the forecast is at the end of this, as you're scrolling down on your phone or paging through on your desktop, is the related media for that zone. And the forecasters take media from their own travels as well as from all the public observations that are illustrative of the different problems. And for this, there was Alex did a really good video talking about recent wind slabs and the deeper persistent problem on south aspects, or the southern half of the compass. But it was it's basically 4 days old at this point. And then related pictures of avalanches and snow pits. So proof, the pictures are worth 1,000 words, and videos are worth even more, so that they can help convey the message and give you a better understanding. Finally, and this is all still part of the full forecast, is the weather forecast with written synopsis of yesterday's conditions, and then a blurb on today's conditions. So including some information on the timing of when that cold front was going to come in. Let's see. Finishing out, you have a table at the bottom, and on your phone, it's basically worth rotating your phone 90 degrees so that you can read it crosswise, more landscape mode. And then you can see the 24-hour conditions. And as you scroll further to the right, you can see today's forecasted wind, temperature, wind direction, and snowfall and snow water equivalent amounts. And one thing about this, if you're relatively new to forecasts, this is what we look at, the inches of snow as far as riding conditions and sledding. This is what the avalanches look at as far as how much weight is being added. So if this snow is melted into water, this is how much weight would be added. So skiers look at this, forecasters look at this. So that was a real quick run through of the full forecast as you might look at it on your phone. And the what a lot of people miss is having their entire forecast on the email. That becomes a little problematic, and it's not insurmountable, and there's potential in the future that you could subscribe to a specific zone forecast and get the full forecast within that email. The challenges that arise is when you get into multiple forecast zones. For example, the Sawtooth has 5 or 6 forecast zones. The Northwest Avalanche Center has 9 or 10 forecast zones. It's simple up in the Chugach, they have 1 forecast zone. So there's a bit of troubleshooting that goes with that if the center moves towards individual zone emails. The bigger problem with it is that any last minute changes or updates to the forecast will be reflected on the website, but won't be reflected on the email. So you're generally going to get the most accurate information through the website and the most functionality. There's definitely a delay between publishing to the website and the sending of the emails, and then the delivery of the emails. And the delivery of the emails is out of the forecast center's hands. Once that's been queued up and sent, then it's up to the individual email host to get them to the people receiving them. And there's any number of potential delays there. Your best bet if you're starting early is to look at the website and to see if it's published there. Because if you're waiting for the email, any number of reasons may delay it. So there is good reason to go to the website first. It has a little more functionality. There are fewer clicks you have to go through if you go to the website in order to get to media and other things. But basically, the current format is set up well for sending out the bottom lines and the hazard ratings for the 3 different zones, and then you can click on get full forecast to get all the information I just went through. All right, that seems like a lot, but we're only halfway through. We're going to move into observations, which I think is a pretty exciting part of this, the new site. And I'll try to, there we go, stop share and share screen. And there we go. Great. So the observations page was, there's an observations platform on all the Avalanche Center sites. This one was custom designed for the Tetons, and I think it has a little more functionality than most of the other Avalanche Centers. It's really impressive where this has gone so quickly. I would say the amount of public input to this and the forecaster input to it is easily 10 times what it was in years past. And it really, I love the functionality of this and the amount of information coming through. So on the top part, maybe I should back out and tell you how to get there. Here's the home page. You can either go to Observations tab and pull the recent observations, or you can just click on View Recent Observations. Once you get there, you have this toolbar at the top. You can go through and read every one, which may or may not be expedient for the amount of time you have, and you can determine the date range. So first off, I might just focus on the past week, and that narrows it. If you want to make a custom range, you can stretch this scroll bar to whatever you want it to be. But I'm going to focus on the past week. And then if I just want bullseye information, I'm going to click on avalanches observed and collapsing and cracking. So if there weren't any avalanches reported, but people were just doing general observations, this field would be blank. But I'll expand this field into past month. There we go. So you have the ability to sort and filter these. Say you're going into the Grays River zone, then you can get just the observations for that. And I'll take these filters off, and that'll show you a few more. Okay, so all these observations here are from the Grays River zone. You can't click multiple zones. You either get whatever zone you choose. If you want multiple zones, you basically get all of them. So then you get Tetons, Togetic Pass, Grays, and potentially some input from the big holes. I looked this morning and did not see any this season from the Bighorn, Sierra Madre, or Snowy Range. So don't worry about getting kind of sucked down in that hole. You can also filter just for forecaster obs or just public obs. But in general, the quality of the public obs has been pretty high. And I would say that it's worth viewing any observer. So these are chronologically dated. They correspond to the dots on the map to the right. And you can see when I hover over Togetic Pass, an ob from today, you can see the red dot illuminated. And if I go to Pucker Face, you can see back into the Teton zone, that one illuminated. So I'm going to take a chance and have a look at this. Okay, so this ob was submitted by the public, and it has a photo of this pocket that pulled out on Pucker Face that was skier triggered, and it was facing southeast. It may or may not have all the information in it, but avalanche occurrences are worth their weight in gold. You could talk about 50 snow pits that you dug, but avalanche occurrences are definitely the class 1 bullseye data. So that's really, really good information. All right, I'm going to back out of that. Very good. I'm going to move on into weather resources. So clicking on the weather tab here, let's start with the infamous Big Sheet. Okay. And this has been around for quite a while now, and it's kind of a one-stop shop for do-it-yourself forecasting. I spent I use this sheet a lot, especially because it's typically available quite early, typically after 5 a.m. So that if I'm going out before the forecast is generated, I can at least have the information to make a more informed forecast on my own part. So I would say this is pretty heavily used by the Bridger-Teton Center users, the advanced users. And I'm just going to spend a minute and describe the different categories here. So it is rare that you would have a wind station that was also a good snow station. So you're rarely going to get both at one place. So looking at the summit obs, it was real cold at 5 a.m. in the morning, -1 with max of 12 and low of -2. Current wind speeds and directions as you move across, then 24-hour average speed and direction there. This next column, if you're not familiar with it, refers to total miles of wind. So it's talking about if you had a feather and basically launched it at 5 a.m. from the summit, how far would that feather blow in the wind over the span of 24 hours? It is really not much different from average wind speed, but it is a little sexier, to be honest. And a lot of folks have threshold values, including the folks at the village. Anytime it's over 500, it's definitely attention getting as far as the potential for snow transport. H hour means the high hour. When was the highest wind speed recorded? So that was at 9 o'clock yesterday morning, with a high hour speed averaging 39 from the southwest, gusting to 58. So that's what that's all telling you. No new snow at that station, or no recording of new snow at that station, mainly because it just blows away. And the RH, relative humidity, was 82%. I find when, especially, you can do this on the phone as well. If you're looking at something in the middle of the table, like mid-mountain, if you click on that row, it's going to be easier to follow that data across and not get lost in adjacent numbers. So this is a snow station. We can see it got at mid-mountain at 8,000 feet, 6 inches of snow, 0.45 inches of water, which gives us 7.5% density. So all the physics students at Jackson Hole High School, that'd be 75 kilograms per cubic meter, basically average density for the Tetons. Depth refers to the total snow depth for the season, and the total for the season, how many inches of snow at mid-mountain, 271. That's more trivia than forecasting, but it's interesting data. 75% relative humidity. So that's how you would read the big sheet as far as what the data means. This can be applied for whatever user area you're going to. There's various names for the, Angle Mountain. This used to be, you might see it referred to at other places, Cowboy, for Cowboy Village Resort, which Togety Mountain Lodge was briefly. So there's different names for that. In any event, you have a whole bunch of data that can give you an insight into how much it snowed, how much it blew, where did it blow from, when was the peak wind speed. All that data can be obtained pretty much after 5 in the morning. Okay. What else? Weather stations. This is a good way to get to weather stations that aren't necessarily on the big sheet. This includes weather stations that are either with DOT, the RWIS network. There's various weather stations that we can get, SNOTELs, that may not necessarily be on the big sheet. So if we wanted to go to Grouse Mountain in the Togadi zone, we can get a quick synopsis of what's happening currently. So at 10,300 feet on Grouse Mountain, it's 7 degrees Fahrenheit. It's blowing 10 miles an hour out of the northwest with a gust of 15. But we can get more than that, but just by clicking on that dot. And then we can get the every 15 minutes data to get trends. We can look at the 7-day cumulative forecast. But I'm going to move down. Let's see, this one doesn't have a windrows. Let's go to Surprise Meadow. Airport. Sorry, better make this a little bigger. Surprise Meadow. Looks like this may not be online. Scroll down. Hopefully, we'll get to windrows. Nope.
Yeah, just scroll again. Go back to the top.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Different representation of the same data. We have wind vectors indicating where the wind was from, and then if you hover over a certain time, it'll give you the average and the gust speed. So as you move down, get into these wind roses, and I find these really, really helpful. Typically when the winds are stronger than they have been in the last 24 hours at Snow King. But it tells you the percentage of time that the wind speed was calm, what the wind speed was light from the east here. So 20% of the 24 hours, the wind was blowing from the east, but in blowing light with light speeds. This is the average speed. If you go to the next rows down, it shows you the gusts and which category that falls into: light, moderate, strong, and extreme. And this one's kind of a mixed message. It's been blowing from both directions. Often you will see them predominantly from one direction, and you can get a sense of, oh yeah, it was consistently out of the northwest, and it was light to moderate. So it was just enough to move snow around. It may be loading the tops of ridges, but may not be pushing that snow way down and creating pillows mid-slope. Or, hey, it's been moderate and strong for 80% of the last 24 hours. That's probably been moving a lot of snow, and it's probably building pillows well below ridge crest. So these wind roses can be actually pretty helpful for picturing how much loading, snow movement there is, and where it might potentially be on slope. Okay. And move on to weather resources. The RPK forecast, this stands for Rendezvous Peak Forecast. This used to be generated predominantly for Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, and has over the years progressed to basically answering the weather needs of the entire Bridger-Teton Avalanche Center. And there's point forecasts all over that zone. it looks pretty intimidating to start. So I start with the easy stuff, English. I'll read the discussion, and it gives us a bigger kind of the synoptic picture, as meteorologists would say. What's the situation? What's creating the weather? What are the main points of the weather that we're going to see? And then you get into numbers. Okay. You may, as a user, be just fine with the written narrative in the full forecast, and that's where you stop. And that's totally fine. If you're going into a specific part of a forecast zone, or you're eternally curious, you can go and dive into this data. And all these codes, FW, CL, all this is defined at the very bottom. So if you scroll to the very bottom of the page, you're going to find all these definitions for you. But what this is saying for Rendezvous Mountain, all these times are local time. First, you're starting with the 24-hour representation, and then what it looks like with PM or AM. So you don't have to worry about Zulu or GMT or any of that. This is all local time. So at 5 p.m., they're predicting few clouds, so less than a quarter of the sky cover with clouds. And cloud cover in percent of sky. Temperature, straightforward, and this is stepped out in 3-hour increments. For every 12 hours, there's a max and min. So the min will be 6. Tomorrow, the max will be 29. And this is for Rendezvous Mountain at 10,000 feet. Moving down, familiar with all these terms until you get down to QPF. And what that means is quantitative precipitation forecast. It's essentially snow water equivalent. If you melt the snow, how much water will you get out of it? And new this year is low end and high end snow amounts. So the 12-hour snow will be forecast or adjusted, what they expect the 12-hour snow amount will be, and then low end and high end will be the values that the models, various models provide. So it's rare that the weather systems read the models, so there'll be some variation, but you get a picture of what the potential is with this low end, high end, and then the forecast or adjusted. Here's what we think. Snow level, this is looking pretty good for us as far as the freezing level staying below most of the forecast zones. This is a big player out in the Cascades and figuring out where you're going to be sopping wet and where you can actually ski dry snow. Certainly, I watch these pretty hard, and these are in thousands of feet. So K being 1,000, this would be snow level at 4,500, 3,800. Looks like tomorrow afternoon, raising up to 7,100. So with no storms in the forecast, we don't have to worry about the R word, at least for quite a while. That's kind of the gist of the RPK forecast. Know that it covers a lot of ground, and you can look at the base of the Bridger-Teton Avalanche Center, Snow King, Fred's Mountain being Grand Targhee, and then Blind Bull into the Grays River Zone. It has Pine Creek Pass, Mount Coffin, Commissary Ridge. There's a huge amount of data here. So go to get familiar with this product if you'd like. Go to the zones that you're planning to go to. Lava Mountain's a good one for planning what you're going to see for alpine wind speeds on the Continental Divide on Togetic Pass. So this is a great product that a lot of people use. Similarly, and this site is evolving even faster than the Bridger-Teton site, is the Southeast Idaho avalanche weather forecast guidance. And it's amazing, I think, the amount of support that the National Weather Service is showing for different avalanche centers. The Chugach is really benefiting from forecast products at their created to help them forecast. So the weather teams are working with the forecast teams quite a bit. So here's the picture for the Pocatello office. These are different point forecast zones for Southeast Idaho. These areas out by Ketchum, Haley, Sun Valley are obviously going to help the Sawtooth more. But here we have Garnes Mountain, Pine Creek Pass, and Palisades Peak. And these are all in the Grays River zone. So if we click on Palisades Peak, then we scroll down, sorry. You can look at graphical forecasts, which works for some people. I'm a numbers guy, so I go to the tabular forecast. And this is pretty much identical to what I just talked about with the RPK forecast, but this is generated for 8,000 feet on Palisades Peak. So a place where heli skiers go and where a lot of sledders go. This is really good information. You can also look at it in the longer term. So instead of going out 3 days, it's going out 5 or 6 days. You can, again, look at all this graphically. I will let you pick your poison on that, but it's, I think it's really strong, excellent products. Also on this page, that honestly, I think changed a little bit from when I was looking at it several hours ago. They will have maps of how much snow you'll get in a 12-hour period, the next 12-hour period, and on out for 3 days. And those can be really good for seeing, hey, what's coming into our particular area within the forecast zone. So I really, if you're going into Southeast Idaho, spend some time looking at this Southeast Idaho avalanche weather guidance. It can be really useful. All right, for the folks who are like, well, I just like looking at the raw data and I miss all this stuff. And we're like, here's a way to access this. This is the legacy list. This is one of the old tables from the old website. Say you want to go to Angle Mountain. In here, the legacy name is Cowboy, as I explained earlier. Cowboy is observations from every hour. Cowboy 2 is observations from every 15 minutes. I'm a pretty big geek, but I don't need 15-minute observations. So I recommend the hourly on this. Again, check time and date to make sure it's current. The most recent is at the top. Battery, you really don't have much concern about how the battery strength is. That's forecasters figuring out if the station is doing well. The one thing you can do with it is say, wow, that battery really charged up really well. It must have been a clear day. So if you're looking at remote data and you see the battery voltages coming up, that's the one thing you can read into it. Air temperature trends through the day. Looks like it got pretty nice. Low of -2, high of 25. Interval snow depths. If you're looking at the more remote stations that the Bridger-Teton runs, those interval boards may not be cleared or likely not cleared every day. It may be up to a week or 10 days between the times. So those interval boards may reflect amounts from previous days. So if we scroll down here, it looks like it started snowing on the 8th around midnight, and had a total of 4 inches maximum, and it hasn't been cleared since, and it's gradually settling. So it's not telling you that there's 3 inches from the last 24 hours. It's until a forecaster physically gets up there and clears snow off the board. You're probably better off looking at the total snow depth to get 24-hour data. And it looks Precipcan might not be recording with a lot of zeros. But this is sometimes useful. It may be a deeper dive than you need to take. Okay. And what are we doing on time? So we have, there's tons more with the graphical forecast. I can let you choose your poison there. You can go down really big rabbit holes, weather forecasting. There's a lot of guidance that is given by the National Weather Service to the Bridger-Teton Avalanche Center to let them focus on avalanche conditions and not trying to generate very specific weather forecasts. The Weather Service takes care of that. But if you're going into a remote place, a very specific place, these are excellent tools to help you micro forecast on your own. So I mentioned that I'd probably run out of time for talking about the advanced forecast products like the Snowpack Tracker, the Radial Avalanche Plot. These are awesome resources. And you can find them through the Snowpack Tracker link will bring you to all three. Okay, and I won't spend any time on these now. Hopefully we'll have some how-tos for you in the future, but these are awesome, awesome products for, especially if you leave town for any amount of time and are coming back and want to catch up on what's been happening, what's the forecast rating, what has it been, what have the avalanches been doing, how many avalanches are there. You can see ones that are triggered at the area versus backcountry, or you can put them all together. There's a huge amount of functionality and information here, but in the interest of answering some questions, I'm going to cut it there and cut to Frank.
Thanks, Don. We got 2 hands raised among the participants. Bill has his hand up. Bill, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask your question.
There we go.
All right. Well, going once, going twice. Bill may not be hearing me, or
He's muted. I can see there's a mute.
Bill, if you have a question, just unmute yourself.
Go to the next one.
Yeah, we'll move on. J. Lori Hunter, you have a question for us? Reminder to unmute yourself if you want to talk into your computer there.
Well, these are simple questions. I could have got those. Or any chat questions?
No chat questions came through. All right, well, looks like it. Unless anyone can always email me. I'm happy to talk avalanches and forecasting and why things are as they are. Frank at Bridger-Teton-AvalancheCenter.org.
All right. No one ever complains when you end a meeting early. I certainly don't. But there is a lot of functionality on the website, and we really encourage you to explore it. And if you don't understand it, please get in touch with Frank via the address he just gave you, and hopefully we'll cut up this Zoom session into how-to videos for various parts of the forecast and create a few more. And I think that will be probably the most useful thing. Okay, thanks for tuning in.